Bonjour, I'm Luka with the Toy de Français, and today we're going to discover a French icon. An icon is a person who is adored for having an immense influence over a specific scope, and today we will be looking at possibly the most influential figure in French music, On y va. Have you ever heard of the legendary French icon Edith Piaf? No? Let's talk about her. Born on the 19th of December 1915, Edith Giovanna Gassion was born in Paris. In the beginning, her circumstances were particularly rough as her childhood would start during the First World War. Her father, Louis Gassion, was an acrobatic street performer, and her mother, Annetta Giovanna Mielord, also just so happened to have been an Italian circus performer. Edith's mother abandoned her shortly after her birth, and when her father enlisted to fight in World War I, Edith was sent to live with her grandmother in Normandy, who just so happened to have run a brothel. Here in the brothel, little Edith would grow up living and being cared for by prostitutes, whom she considered to be like her family. Little else is known about Edith's early childhood years, except for the fact that she suffered from severe blindness for several years, which, according to her, was miraculously cured. At the start of her teenage years, Edith's father would take her around the streets of Paris to perform. This is where she would get her start in music. Shortly after her start in street performing, Edith would meet the woman who would become a lifelong friend, Simone Berthaud. The two would make a living singing on the streets of Paris together. Then in 1932, Edith met a man named Louis Dupont. Shortly after being acquainted, the two would move in together and have a baby girl named Marcel. She was only 17 when she had given birth to baby Marcel, and the child sadly wouldn't live past the age of 2 years old, as she had contracted meningitis and died shortly after Edith had left her with Louis when their relationship was over. The same year that her daughter died would be the same year that she was discovered by a nightclub owner named Louis Lepley. In fact, it was Lepley who had given Edith Giovanna Gassion the stage name Edith Piaf, which would follow her for the rest of her life. You see, Edith was a very short woman, only 4 feet and 8 inches, and was incredibly shy and nervous. For these reasons, she reminded Lepley of a tiny sparrow, which is what prompted his idea for her new alias, Edith Piaf. This seemed like the beginning of a promising music career. Her nightclub gigs would quickly lead to her producing 2 records. But then, shockingly, Lepley was murdered by the mob, the same mob Edith Piaf had connections to. Piaf was naturally a prime suspect, but was later acquitted. She may have gotten out of this catastrophe as a free woman, but her public image did not go unscathed. To salvage what was left of her public image, she employed a man named Raymond Asso, a lyricist who would help her advance her career to new heights. And whilst working together, the two would become lovers. However, Asso was not a particularly nice man and kept her on a tight leash, being strict with how she used her time, who she met with, and how she even spent her money. With the help of Raymond Asso, her career really did take off. This also happened to be around the same time that the Nazis had occupied Paris. All of her songs would have to be vetted by the Nazis before being produced, but the Nazis genuinely liked Edith Piaf and often attended her performances at nightclubs and brothels. Simply making appearances at venues and producing music during Nazi-occupied Paris was enough to earn her negative feelings from native French people. Regardless of the political and economic crises of the time, Edith Piaf's career was skyrocketing, and in 1942 she was able to afford a luxury apartment in the 16th arrondissement of Paris. After the war was over, Edith Piaf would have to testify to the post-war legal trial as she was accused of being not only a Nazi sympathizer, but also a collaborator with the German occupying forces. This was a challenging moment in her life and career. The reality is that Edith Piaf was silently indifferent. She did perform for Nazi soldiers, that is true, but at the same time, she also helped hide several Jewish musicians. She never took any action in particular to help either side of the war, suggesting that she was possibly just neutral. For these reasons, she was acquitted. Edith Piaf's silence during the Second World War is not the only thing that caused her unwanted controversy, as this very much was still the 1940s, and Edith Piaf lived the life of a modern-day rock and roll artist. She did a lot of drugs and had a lot of lovers. Addiction is a demon Edith Piaf would struggle with throughout her entire life. She had suffered from an injury due to a car accident, and the doctors prescribed her morphine, a substance she would find impossible to quit. While constantly taking pills, she would also drink heavily. Addiction to alcohol was something that Edith Piaf struggled with throughout her whole life. This would be the driving cause of Piaf's litany of health issues. There were even 2 separate instances when Edith Piaf would run off stage coughing up blood, likely caused by alcohol-induced stomach ulcers. Piaf no doubt drank and used substances to lessen her pain, both physical and emotional. Physical pain from her car accident, but emotional pain as well from her never-ending loneliness. She desperately wanted genuine love, but all of her series of relationships with men were fleeting and ill-fated. She once even expressed that, after every fling she had with someone, she feels even more disgusted than wholesome, and wished that she had at least one great love in her life. Unfortunately, she would never gain a lifelong love. The closest she ever came to a great love was her relationship with Marcel Cerdan, a champion boxer with a wife and 3 kids. The two were very devoted to each other, but just when Edith thinks that she finally found her person, she received the heartbreaking news in October 1949 that her partner, Marcel Cerdan, had died in a plane crash. Edith Piaf, absolutely crushed, dedicated the hit song Hymne à l'amour to her deceased partner, Marcel Cerdan. Piaf continued to focus on her work and would spend the rest of her life both performing and going in and out of hospitals. She continued to produce sensational songs that are still highly referenced even today, such as La Vie en Rose, which is the very song that made her an international legend.
Quand il me prend dans ses bras, qu'il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me fait quelque chose.
Or even her other hit song, No je ne regrette rien, which, while it may not have been her last song recorded, it still perfectly summed up her life as it was nearing its bitter end.
Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal. Tout ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien.
In 1962, just 1 year before her death, she would marry Teo Sarrapo, an aspiring singer and much younger man. The two would even collaborate together. Then, on October 10th, 1963, beside her husband Teo Sarrapo, she would pass away from liver failure at age 47. Her final words were, "Every damn thing you do in this life you have to pay for." This quote of hers I find to be particularly true to the life of Edith Piaf, as she would never gained anything she didn't have to pay for one way or another. In life, no one helped her, so she helped herself through all the trials and tribulations life threw at her, and in the end, it cost her her health, both physical and mental. Even though Edith Piaf died in the early 1960s, she is still very much an influential figure in the music industry. Not only are her songs still used in media today, but she has continued to inspire artists who came after her. For example, Edith Piaf had been an inspiration to another legendary French singer, Dalida, who in a funny crossover of history, Piaf congratulated the young chanteuse, saying to her, "You're a winner, kid, like me. After me, it will be you." Even today, 60 years after her death, Edith Piaf's songs of love and sadness, hope and regret still remain relevant and inspirational today. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of French Icons with La Toile du Français. If you enjoyed watching this video, please like and subscribe.